To start today's video, I need you to take a look at this chart, just so that you actually feel the story, because it's EA's stock. It has just fallen off a cliff. It's lost $6 billion in market value in just one day. It is the largest single-day drop in the company's history. So the question then is, what would cause their investors to sell so fast that the price dips 15%? Well, the other thing you've probably heard by now anyway is the Dragon Age, the Veilguard, did not do particularly well. Which is true, it didn't. And we're core gamers, right? For us, something like Dragon Age is the thing that we'll actually care about. It's a game that underperformed after internal reboots and years of development time blows. But if you flip over to CNBC and the other financial press, you will see a different focus on today's story, because as it turns out, Dragon Age's struggles are just the tip of the iceberg here. For investors, that is not even close to EA's largest problem right now, even though it is a game that absolutely fell short of expectations and by a large margin. So if a loss that big is basically a rounding error compared to the thing that's actually spooked investors, you know it's not really a fun time in EA right now. Two games missed their financial targets so much that EA have been forced to slash their financial forecasting. Here's how the story basically went down. What sets it up is actually last October, because then EA was feeling absolutely amazing, so much so that they bumped their yearly forecast up from 7.5 billion to 7.8 billion. They were riding high off Madden and EA Sports college football doing well. And the thing to understand here is that college football was absurdly successful, right? Actually getting the college football scene into a video game turned out to be a humongous thing for US audiences, so much so that that was actually the fastest selling sports title ever in the US. So that was absolutely huge. They were feeling great, they upped their forecasts, and well, now they've had to go and give people bad news. But to make that bad news just a little bit more tolerable, they at the very same time announced that there's obviously going to be another EA Sports college football. Doing that was obviously an attempt to make their bad news go down a little bit better, but there's a thing that goes on in markets. Everyone assumed there would be another college football, so college football was, what people would say, already priced into the market, which is why it hasn't really helped them out too much. That's because their bad news was really quite bad. What they did, right, is they just announced that their forecast has been updated. It's now 7 billion to 7.15 billion, which is actually down $500 to $800 million from the guidance that they issued in October. That is a humongous change. Now, this is not to say that EA is hurting, that they've literally ran out of money and they're going to be screwed. The point here is that these are public companies, and especially in video games, staying level is not good enough. The line has got to go up, and that is why Wall Street freaked out at this news. EA basically went from being an amazing safe bet for growth to just being safe, not safe for growth. And the $6 billion stock drop, that is pure panic from investors who expect constant growth. Now, there's two games that are taking the blame here. One crushed by unrealistic expectations, and the other one bleeding enough money to cost EA $500 million on its own. But first, we're gonna talk about Dave, by which I mean Dragon Age the Veilguard. So, it hit 1.5 million players in Q4 of 2024, and that includes people playing on the EA Play subscription. This is actually bad, at least as compared to what EA wanted, because they actually wanted double. They wanted that to be 3 million. They were off by 50%, so I guess we gotta ask, how the hell could EA be so off? I mean, this is literally their job. They should be good, like if they're good at anything, they should be good at forecasting sales. Here's basically what I can piece together. Previous Dragon Age games were actually real solid performers. Dragon Age Origins did 3.2 million units in 3 months. Dragon Age 2 hit 2 million in 2 months, and Inquisition was BioWare's fastest selling game ever. Then a bit more recently, Mass Effect Legendary Edition actually exceeded expectations, and when that happened, EA almost certainly saw amazing dollar signs on the horizon, because Dragon Age had actually historically outsold Mass Effect. So if anything, wow, Veilguard should really be in for a pretty good run. But if that was their analysis, it missed extremely obvious problems. Let's go through them. So, Veilguard is a direct sequel to a 2014 game. right? 2014 is like 2 console generations of lost momentum, and also Veilguard only released on the new consoles. I mean, yeah, it obviously released in PC as well, but as I covered in this story pretty recently, the install base of the new console gen is nowhere near catching up to the PS4 and Xbox One combined. And if we're to think back to the Mass Effect Legendary Edition sales, well, funnily enough, they did benefit from a, 120 million install base for the PS4, just as one example, which this game obviously could not sell on. But in addition to that, there's also BioWare's reputation. It's not good anymore. I mean, you've got Andromeda, you've got Anthem, and even for this game, there were multiple exposés about troubled development, there were core staff layoffs in 2023, and basically them rebuilding the whole game since 2022, which kind of notably was after Mass Effect Legendary Edition overperformed. As for the final game itself, Veilguard, and I say final because its most recent patch does pretty much seem to be, it, and there's going to be no DLC for it. If you look just by the numbers, the finished product is a 70% on Steam per Steam users. It has an 80% critic average, but only a 70% critic recommendation. And the critic recommendations in OpenCritic are far more analogous to Steam scores than the actual rated critic average. So actually, critics and people who at least bought the game on Steam are kind of aligned, and it's yeah, 70%. If it's your thing, buy it, but really not much else reason to buy it. It's also a bit weird because it's not structured like Origins or Inquisition, so it's going to lose some people who really liked those games, and at least based on me talking to people I know who have played the game and reading reviews, Veilguard also puts its worst foot forward. I've seen people be very critical about the game, but actually say that its ending ended up being quite the banger, but that never matters if the first bunch of hours of your game puts people to sleep. Allegedly, the very controversial reveal trailer was not even made by BioWare. Apparently, right, it was pushed through by EA marketing in spite of the developers not being happy with the trailer. Of course, we all know how badly received that trailer was, and if the publisher's marketing team are the people helping with the sales predictions, and also, as an example, got it so wrong with that trailer, and they're not listening to the developers, well, maybe that just doesn't bode well for EA's understanding of the thing that they've got to sell. But also, industry-wide expectations and budgets are a hell of a thing. There's so many examples, but some easy ones are Final Fantasy XVI, which sold 3 million copies in 3 months, but was considered a disappointment, and is entirely contrasted by Metaphor ReFantasio, because it spent 8 years in development, it sold 1 million copies day one, and was therefore considered to be a completely outsized success. Perhaps, and this is just a theory, right? But having sane costs for your games and sane expectations actually matters when it comes to the running of your business. Why are there different standards here? Well, this is actually a fun thing that industry analyst Matt Piscatella made a really good point on, even though it sounds absolutely goddamn insane. To quote him, sometimes sales targets are adjusted to account for longer or more expensive development than were originally planned for, even if everyone involved in the adjusting knows that the resulting target is outlier/unreasonable. I don't know why flagrant bullshit is normal, but Matt's been in the game as an analyst longer than I have, so I'm gonna take his word on it, and the idea that big companies do completely stupid shit, well, yeah, that stands to reason, doesn't it? And so, at least for this game, after 10 years of on and off development, Veilguard needed Inquisition numbers or better. Context be damned. Now, BioWare's not closing. They are now focused purely on Mass Effect. Some staff are temporarily moving over to Battlefield or some other opportunities within the company, but while Dragon Age's struggles hurt, EA's real financial nightmare lies in sports. Sports have basically been their golden goose, and now the golden goose is showing some kind of concerning signs of ill health. So here's what happened, right? EA's sure bet has always been their sports games, and it's not like they've been annihilated here. As I said, college football was the best-selling sports title in the US, industry-wide ever, not just EA. But the success of that type of what I would here call American football, well, that came at what was to EA an unexpected cost, but perhaps to anyone else was an expected cost. It seems to have eaten into the Madden audience, right? So they've had a massive win, a little bit of a loss there. But meanwhile, there is EA Sports FC, which is their post-FIFA partnership flagship, allegedly hemorrhaging players. analysts say that it is down 1.8 million monthly active users, that total engagement is down 2%, and that European sales are down 5%. Now, to say that this series is big in Europe is an understatement, in the same way that anyone in Europe won't really understand how EA Sports College Football was really big. Maybe in America you wouldn't understand how big EA Sports FC, previously just the FIFA games, is over here. It is absolutely goddamn humongous, and it's not just the sales being down 5%, according to analysts, because when the sales go down, Ultimate Team engagement goes down. Ultimate Team is EA's real money, right? It is the beating heart of their financial stability. It is the very thing that has insulated that company from Andromeda, from Anthem, from Battlefield, all of the misses that they have had thus far. So yes, we're all talking about Dragon Age because it's a core gaming title, a big RPG, but compared to sports, it is a goddamn rounding error. Literally, if you run the numbers, it's a rounding error. It does not matter compared to sports revenue. And to ram that home, here is what's actually spooked the investors, right? After 2 years of double-digit live service growth, EA has now went from predicting single-digit growth to predicting single-digit decline. So if you're going to say big growth, decline, draw a little curve there, does kind of look like what went up is now coming down. And for EA, that is a complete existential problem. To drive home just how profitable EA Sports Division is, they actually split it off from the rest of the company. FC and FIFA before it were not just successful, they were foundation level successful. It was one yearly release generating billions without meaningful competition. I remember when it used to be FIFA versus Pro Evolution Soccer, but that just melted away. Now, the games didn't even need to be great. If you look through the FIFA titles, you will see that mixed reviews are completely par for the course, but somehow the 2025 entry fell below those low standards, which is bad. And what's fascinating is that EA CEO Andrew Wilson actually predicted this problem. He just predicted it for the wrong game. When he was talking about the decline in Apex Legends' returns, he claimed that once you hit a certain scale with quality and innovation, it's nearly impossible to be displaced. The irony then, right, is that the same complacency that bit Apex is now biting their sports division, hence the declines. What if I told you that somehow it actually gets worse? In the minds of many people, the big yearly football game is still called FIFA. It's just that whenever they went to buy the recent one, for some reason it said in the box, EA Sports FC. A little bit weird, a little bit confusing, but the point is, that deal that they had with FIFA, that went. EA have rebranded it, and that is a humongous hit to their brand recognition. But that has happened right as quality declines have actually bit them in the ass. And the one group who are licking their lips are Konami, because not only has their opponent in the football space lost brand awareness and quality, Konami have also snapped up the FIFA license for the next World Cup. Now, for so many people, they know that there is a yearly football game called FIFA. They don't really know what a developer is, or a publisher is, or even the difference between them. They don't care who makes it. The game is that broad in its audience. So if Konami beat EA on quality, and they have got FIFA, the brand that within gaming EA built their empire off, it actually could be a bit catastrophic. And by catastrophe, I do not mean EA Sports FC will die. I don't mean that. But if a 5% drop, as analysts put it, if that turns to 10%, 15%, or even 20%, that would be disastrous, because that game drives an outsized proportion of EA's revenue and profits. And while it might be easy to think, oh great, I don't give a shit about sports games. If the sports games go and burn, they'll have to focus on the real games for us capital G gamers. No, it's not going to be like that. When the money printer starts to fail, everything else tends to feel the squeeze. So at the grander scale, EA's entire business rests on a handful of golden geese. You can think of them as load-bearing pillars. You've got The Sims, which is just quietly churning out content and actually finding a new lease of life as a free-to-play game. Then you've got their entire sports empire that prints money through monopoly positions, and then you've got Apex Legends delivering billions of relatively cheap revenue. These are the big pillars. They hold up the rest of the company. Now, investors, the market, the market, it wants stability and it wants growth, right? Now, you cannot deliver stable growth through 4-year development cycle single-player titles. So, Cal Kestis is never going to save Electronic Arts insofar as the market cares. A few banging EA originals are not going to save EA. Now, if those land, they can produce some awesome quarterly results, right? But that only matters if it's atop a basis of strong ongoing live service revenue. Think back to the revenue numbers at the top of this video, right? We're basically talking about, for the sake of ease, let's just say 1 million sales for Veilguard that didn't happen. Even if those 1 million sales were somehow at maximum RRP, right? Of, $70. Oh wow, $70 million. What we've been talking about is a $500 to $800 million decline. Wasn't Dragon Age that did that, it was sports. Now, to be completely clear, I am not saying this because I don't care about a good Dragon Age game, a good Mass Effect game. No, those are the games that I actually want to play. The actual point here is that the football business is so large, as compared to anything else that maybe most people watching this video could care about, that if football starts to decline, everything else is going to suffer. Because if football goes, in many ways, EA, as the financial instrument that it's became, well, it kind of goes. And that's going to be worrisome for them. Obviously, it's impossible to tell what's going to happen next. Personally, I just want a good Battlefield. I want a good Mass Effect. That's as far as it really goes for me. But if you like this kind of video, oh boy, I've got a perfect follow-up, because it turns out Game Pass has been cannibalizing up to 80% of sales for Microsoft. It's a fascinating story, and you can check it out here.